In those days, most people, most everybody, pretty much everybody, knew about herbal medicine. It was just passed down from generation to generation for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. They found some herbs at an Iraqi burial site that was carbon dated 80,000 years old. So 80,000 years ago, the Iraqis, were messing around with herbs. It was a burial site, so they were presumably herbs that they would use in the afterlife. Kind of like the pharaohs, they would get buried with their wives. I don't know what they do with them. But people knew about herbal medicine, got passed down from mother to daughter, father to son, whatever, generation after generation after generation. In 80% of the world today, botanical medicine is the primary medicine. It's only in industrialized areas of the world, like the US and some parts of Europe, that has been replaced by pharmaceutical medicine. Most conditions where people took care of themselves. In the old days, most people lived in single-family farms, right? Only a few people lived in the cities. If you like Little House on the Prairie, right? You go across the prairie for miles and miles, you get into town, which is like a block long. A saloon, a barber shop, a bank, and a restaurant. That was town, right? A general store. But people made most of their own stuff. They grew their own food. They made their own clothes. They were very self-reliant, and they took care of their own medicine with the plants that grew around them. They knew those plants, and so if the simpler was called in, there would be condition that was stubborn, that wasn't responding, or that was outside their knowledge base. So they'd call in this expert, the herbalist, the simpler, and they would come to your home, actually. What a concept, right? And they wouldn't have to bring anything with them because the medicine they were going to use grew all around you. And so they would generally take somebody from the household with them out into the field, the forest, the riverbank, whatever, and harvest some herbs that were appropriate for that condition, bring them back to the house and prepare the medicine. Now their job was done because that person from the household had a rudimentary, knowledge of herbal medicine. Now they knew which plants to get, where to get them, and how to prepare the medicine. Good to go. You don't need the simpler anymore. And that was traditional for a long, long, long time. The concept of simpling is exactly that. Use the herbs that grow around you. Use the local herbs. And part of how they address your dis-ease by helping you reconnect you, because those plants that grow around you are connected to the local earth energy, and they'll help hook you up with that. But also a lot of environmental conditions that cause health problems for us also support plants that address those health conditions. I first understood this concept at herb school in 1984, and I'd already been an herbalist for 6 years. I hadn't heard this before, understood this, but when I did, I looked at what was going on around me. I had come from Southern California, which is basically semi-arid, and the main herb that grows in the Southwest is an herb called chaparral, Laria. It addresses skin conditions you can get from a hot, dry climate, including cancer. So I looked along the riverbank up by where I lived in Guerneville. And what I found a lot of plants that had fuzzy leaves. And again, with the mullein, fuzzy leaves indicate an affinity for the lung. And down next to the Russian River there, it was June, and in the field, in the meadow, it was like 85 degrees, sunny and warm. But next to the river, under the redwood trees, it was cool and damp. And you could see the smoke coming out of the chimneys in the morning there for the houses that were there. Although our house was in the sun, it was nice and warm. If you spend time in an environment that's cool and damp like that, it can cause respiratory conditions. And that obviously provided an environment for plants that treat what? Respiratory conditions. So I saw a correlation there. That was pretty cool. And the other concept here is to use mild herbs. But because they are mild, we use them in large amounts. When we think of medicine, because of pharmaceuticals, we think of little pills, okay? Little pills. But mild herbs, you don't need a little pill, you need a big handful. I mean, a big handful. I'll show you on the scale next week. We're going to do tinctures next week. And I'll show you what an ounce of herbs looks like. Okay, and it'll blow your mind. It's a lot. But that's how much is the therapeutic amount for one person for one day.